Hello, this is Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools, and I'm going to show you the Lightning Data Viewer client-side web part, both in SharePoint and also in Microsoft Teams. The Data Viewer is a tool that can be used to connect to external data sources and allow you to build a view of data with conditional formatting and styling with inside SharePoint or also Microsoft Teams tabs, or you can also build a chart such as a 3D pie or a donut chart. So first of all, we're going to click onto Configure and connect to some different data sources. You'll notice here under the data source provider that there's 4 different data sources currently that we can connect to, and they include SharePoint lists as well as business connectivity services. There's OData services as well as SQL Azure databases. So if we were to connect to a SharePoint list, we can simply just choose that list, select whether or not we want to choose a grid view or a charts view as our display, and on the data source tab, this will load our site collections, allowing us to drill down into the lists and select the list that we want to display on the page. If we were to select something like business connectivity services, the data source is now prompting us for the external content type namespace and external content type name, and then we can select the finder and specific finders. If we were to go through and choose the SQL Azure option, then of course we're going to enter the server name as well as the credentials to connect to that database, select the database itself, and then the table or view that we want to connect to. And finally, if we were choosing OData service, which is the example I'm going to give, we can go through and select the data source tab and type in or paste in this case, the OData service URL. And if you wanted to test out the data viewer, this is a great way of testing it. You can connect to this same service which comes from odata.org and paste in the URL to that service, and then you can click onto load entities, and that will give you a number of different data sources that you can try out. So the first one that I'm going to connect to is the products entity. So we can return a list of products on our page from this OData service. And when we go to the columns tab, you'll notice that I can go through and select the columns that I want to display. So we've got the select all option at the top there, and then I can deselect the columns that I don't necessarily need to see. We can also add our own columns, so I can create a calculated column in here, and what I'm going to do is call this one sales tax and choose the data type for that column, which is going to be double in this case, and then I can simply do my own calculation. So in the expression drop down, I've got the ability to choose the unit price, which I can then insert into my expression builder, and I'm going to simply multiply that by 0.2. And when we hit save, I now have a new sales tax column that I can drag and drop into the position that I want it to appear in and choose to display that on the page. And we can at any time go back in and edit that expression as well. We can also set the sort criteria here. So I can sort by any of these columns just simply by selecting each one and whether it's going to be ascending or descending. And if we were to sort on multiple columns, I can then set the primary and the secondary sort within there as well. We've also got filters, so we can filter on any of the columns. So if we wanted to, for example, filter on the discontinued column, notice how we've got the appropriate option to set that to true or false as to whether it's continued or not. And of course, something like unit price is just going to be your standard operators. And at the top here, I can also filter across columns. So we can have outer operators of and or so that we can build some more complex filters that go across each of the columns. On the final tab, we get to refine our view, so we can do things like set the data formatting. So unit price, for example, we want to set that to currency, and likewise goes for the sales tax column that we created. Discontinued, I could set whether I want to display that as a yes or a no, a true or a false, or render a checkbox or a toggle control. So we have the options for that as well. We've got the alignment, of course, grouping as well, so we can go through and group by any of the columns, and the same applies for this as it did for sorting. I can go through and select multiple levels of grouping and then set the order of that grouping. We can refine the forecolor and the background color of every column, and that extends to the row as well, which we can go through and configure. And then we've also got conditional formatting as well. So one of the things that we might want to do, for example, is highlight the stock that is running low. So I can basically go through and select the units in stock, and if we were to say that that is falling below a certain level, so we'll enter 30 in here, then in that case I want to go and highlight it, which I can do using a color. So we could go through and change the forecolor or the background color. So in this case I'm going to choose the forecolor, and we'll select a custom color, and I'm just going to choose the red there. And notice how we show the most recently selected colors as well within our conditional formatting. Okay, so that's setting up some conditional formatting, which also includes icons and data bars, and we'll have a look at some of that in a moment. So that's the conditional formatting set there. I'm going to set the same sort of thing on the discontinued column, so we can clearly see whether this is discontinued or not. So for this one, I can show a icon, and we can set the color for that icon. So anything that is discontinued will show with a red icon, and I can make that to the left or to the right of the cell value. And of course we'd want to show a different color icon when the discontinued products is set to true. Okay, so we can save that, and we can also go through and show data bars. So in here I'm going to go through and show the units on order. So we'll go through and delete the condition in this case, and I'll just enter 50 as a value here. I only want to show the value itself, so that will show some data bars for the units on order. Okay, so let's click Save, and you'll notice now we have the conditional formatting set, so we can see when we're getting low in stock because the font has changed to red, and we may also see some data bars, which is obviously going to require that I scroll to the right here, but we can see the units on order showing in that instance. Okay, so that's the data viewer grid view control that we can use, but we can also extend that to building a chart as well. So on the right hand side of this page, I'm going to go through and configure a connection again to an OData service, but this time I'm going to render a chart. So on the data source tab, we'll paste in the same service URL, and what I'm going to do is actually build a chart that is based on the product sales. So we'll choose a view, go to the columns, and we'll select each of the columns here, and we'll go to display, and notice how we've now got this line chart showing the data, which I can go through and customize. So I can change it from being a line to a column chart if I so choose, or we could also go through and set it to an area, and basically select the type of chart that I'd find most appropriate. And if you want to, you can also go through and switch that out to a pie or a donut, and customize that view as well. Okay, so we've got our product sales, and all I need to do is click on to save with that, and we've now got a chart being rendered on this page as well, which I can go through and publish. So another instance that we have of the data viewer is actually inside Microsoft Teams here, and this shows a multi-series chart. So the data viewer can simply be added as a new tab within inside a Teams channel, and if we want to go through and customize that, we can basically hit the drop down and choose settings, and we can now go through and configure our view. So in this case, you'll see that I'm connecting to a SharePoint list, also rendering a charts view. So my data source is a individual list inside this this site. The columns are selected, so I'm selecting more than one column this time. So we've got the sales, the cost of sales, as well as profit and month. And when we navigate to the display, notice how each of those series is then being displayed within inside the chart. So if we wanted to change any aspect of this, like not to display the profit, for example, or something like that, then we can do that. And we can also go through and change colors or styles of the chart as well with inside that view. And once we're happy with it, we just hit save and that will render the final result. Okay, so the data viewer is a very flexible tool. It's available for download, so you can download it and deploy it inside your environment. So just above this video on the data viewer product page, you'll find a link to download it. It's also available for SharePoint on premises as well, so you can use it there, as well as obviously inside Microsoft Teams. And if you would like to download the trial, you can do, but also if you don't have the permission to go through and deploy something to your app catalog, then please get in touch on sales@lightningtools.com and we can provide you with access to the data viewer with an R tenant so that you can at least find out if it's going to suit your needs before you ask your tenant administrator to deploy the product. Okay, many thanks for watching.